we warned people last week. Not every Trump pick was going to get through because he was doing what we wanted. He was pursuing an aggressive strategy. He was saying, like, you know, he was going for it all with all of his picks. He was not making safe ones. He wasn't worried about batting 1,000. And so he nominated Matt Gaetz last week for Attorney General. I think a lot of us were excited about that. We thought this is a guy who will have the right energy for what we need at DOJ, but it was not to be. He did pull back. He withdrew his nomination for Attorney General. It makes him, I believe, tied for the third shortest cabinet nomination in history. There was one person who was nominated for Secretary of War more than 100 years ago who was nominated for 1 day. I don't know the details on that, so I have to go look that up. And then also Bernie Kerik was nominated the same number of days. And then I believe he had to withdraw due to those Bush's pick for Homeland Security, and he had to withdraw. And instead we got, I believe, Tom Ridge, which forced us to endure 20 years of Tom Ridge as like a presidential nominee contender. Ugh. But now we have to see
he was my governor. The whole thing. It was a whole thing.
Gruesome, ghastly. So now we have to ask ourselves, who is the next AG of the United States?
That is the question. Jack, why don't you break down your opinion on all of this?
Look, so my opinion on all of this, I'll put it this way. When Matt Gaetz' name came out, I said, wow, because that even go before that, right? So even before that, we were all saying, so Donald Trump has won. We've got the majority. We've got the Senate. We've got the House. And people are all looking around saying, okay, what do we do now? We've got this mandate. And people were putting together their short lists. Obviously, in terms of the cabinet, probably the number one most important pick for the cabinet is the Attorney General. There's no question. And people were putting together their short lists. People were putting together the who's who. People were flying down to Mar-a-Lago. Charlie, you and I were there. And we saw people doing the interviews. And Matt Gaetz' name was not on any of those lists. This was a total out of right field surprise pick. It was something that took D.C. by absolute storm. It was something that took, I think, Trump world by absolute storm. And you saw everybody line up behind it because we said, you know what? This is the kind of guy who's a pit bull. This is the kind of guy who absolutely can do the job, knows what needs to be done, and has the guts to do so. But I do think that there was that question in the back of all of our minds, that voice in the back of our minds saying, well, wait a minute, guys, we have to live in reality. And we know, look, okay, we've got a bunch of really, really good senators elected. We flipped a lot of great seats. But at the same time, 50 votes is a tall order in the United States Senate. And a lot of us were thinking, is it possible to get him over that finish line? And we knew that we could lose 3, but as it turned out, and I figured those 3 would be Alaska, Maine, and Utah, the Mitt Romney clone who just got elected in Utah. But as it turns out, it was 4. The magic number we needed was 3, but we ended up with 4 because Mitch McConnell was a hard no, which came out in Jonathan Swan and a bunch of people. And Charlie, you had tweeted about this as well. So the idea being that, for people who have been in D.C. for a long time, for people who have been in the business, for people who, by the way, have been in the MAGA movement for a long time, we know that things don't just magically appear for us. You got to work for it. You got to fight. And MAGA does not take days off. This movement does not take days off. And so essentially it's like, okay, that's where we are, but we're in a much better position than we were beforehand because now we've already gone through the process. Now we've already seen, where the sleeping snakes are in the field, and we can determine which way to go forward. And by the way, I know for a fact, and Charlie, I know you know as well, that these are all discussions and thoughts that President Trump himself and his team have had all along while looking at this.
Yeah, and so the question is who's next, and there's a lot of names being floated there. I do want to say, though, that the Deputy Attorney General that has been nominated, Todd Blanche, is terrific. This guy, when he represented Donald Trump personally, remember in the civil trial, Todd Blanche left his very, very high, white shoe law firm, you could say. Is that the right way to word it? White shoe law firm, Blake? There's some sort of saying.
It's that for top law firms. That's kind of the slang term for it.
So and he represented Donald Trump in that criminal trial and was amazing. And he's a total fighter. He lost a lot. In fact, let me read this to you. Blanche left the law firm that he was at just to be able to represent President Donald Trump. He was a partner at Callawander, Wickersham, and Taft, which has 400 attorneys and 5 offices and does $600 million a year in revenue. He left that because if you're to represent Donald Trump, you're not allowed to be at any of those law firms. He doesn't care. He said, I wanted to represent Donald Trump. And so following the May 30th conviction on 34 felony accounts, Blanche stated that to Trump's defense team obviously plans to appeal the verdict. So he has demonstrated that he is loyal to the president, and what he wants to do with the Attorney General's office, we shall see. But I think that's a very important name to consider. And you got to give, look, Matt Gaetz made this decision himself. I know Matt very well, and I've kind of been seeing his name throughout this process. And Matt was like, look, there's an immovable block of 5 or 6 senators. I'm not going to have the president spend all of this political capital if we can't move these senators. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. Tyler, your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that what we had discussed before was going to happen, where this would go, it would force a vote. And for sure, I think this was going to be one of the first confirmation processes. Usually, I think AG would probably be up there. So I'm wondering if a little bit of strategy changed a little bit within Trump world, and thinking that this may have impact on other confirmations. And so maybe you never know what kind of horse trading is going on in the background with some of these things. It's likely that there is some significant horse trading going on, which is good for other appointments, cabinet appointments here. And I'm sure that that's part of the process, was like, hey, look, if you pull out now, we'll figure it out. We'll sail some of these others through, which is good. But at the same time, we just put up at Turning Point Action, Charlie, and you know this, and we're going to be going very hard on this. tpaction.com/noexcuse, which gives all of the voting records for every single one of the Republicans who voted to confirm all of Biden's appointees. And so it's just good for the general public to know, the more educated that the public is on these issues, on specifically which appointments that were approved by Republicans in your own home state. That gives you the wherewithal to call them, to talk to them, to create a hubbub, to get on X and other places and talk a lot more about this, because it is without reason to approve some of these, like Mayorkas, for example, but not be in the saddle for Donald Trump's appointment.